like a man on the run, riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
All right, boys. We're Crappie Connection back here at the Grizzly Jig Show 2020. I'm Justin Berry.
Brad Chappell here.
We got the second episode of Charlie and Travis Bunting since last year. Just love sitting down and talking to these guys. Brad, tell me what we're gonna talk about.
Well, one thing that they asked what we want to talk about today, and I come to this kind of experience with these guys is, one, we want these listeners to kind of find out how you diagnose a new lake when you go to it, as far as breaking it down and where you want to start fishing at. And some of your techniques that you do that. I mean, give us some of the rundown. I'm looking more like a Postspawn question for you guys. The heat of the spawn's over with, but you're going to Lake Hamilton or any lake.
You want to pick out a lake for him?
Probably not that lake, but
I don't even know where Lake Hamilton is.
Right, it don't matter.
Most of the time, we're going to look at a map, and wherever we're going to look at southern regions, northern regions. We're going to look at different things, but the main thing we're going to look at is where's the most influx of water that comes into this body of water.
Right.
Typically, in any lake across the country, wherever the most water comes in is where the richest water is.
Right.
It has the most nutrients in it, which means the bait fish is going to go faster, the crappie are going to grow faster. It also means that water is going to be jacked up more than any other part of the lake. So there's going to be less fishing opportunities to catch fish. Lake rises 6 inches and 5 inches of it comes in from one arm. It's going to be unfishable for several weeks. Which gives all the crappie in that area that much better chance to survive and grow to the next year and the next year and become bigger fish. That's where I normally start anyways, and it just as long as that fresh water hasn't come in,
right.
The week that we're heading to that body of water. But
looking for areas pretty much that's not fished as often and the biggest currents coming into the lake.
Right. Just because that's typically where your bigger crappie's going to live on most lakes. And post-spawn changes a little bit too because, post-spawn can be tough. It absolutely can be, or it can be really phenomenal too. Just depends on how you catch it.
I always think of post-spawn, it's like, I don't like that first week and a half, 2.5 week time frame right after they kind of go in a little lull.
You think they're just worn out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're wore out.
They get wore out and then they get real hungry because they need to rebuild their body and rebuild, get their strength back. And I think that's what you're talking about,
right.
Brad, is because when they kind of go in that lull, because they're weak, but when they come back and they're hungry.
They're right. They're mean and they're ready to feed up again.
Then you can catch them good.
Yeah, you can pull them jigs on them. Or the crankbaits like you guys. That's one thing that a lot of people don't think of you two guys as guys that pull a lot of crankbaits and such, but I know that's opposite.
Yeah, we do the crankbaits. We're gonna, when I open water, I'm gonna be using the planer board, and I'm gonna get them out, and try to get them spread out for I can cover more water. So far, I don't think that we've actually pulled crankbaits maybe one time in a tournament, but I do a lot of it looking, and trying to figure out what's going on. If those fish are scattered out in open water, then it's taking those planer boards and taking a 90-foot swath, you're covering so much more water.
I know one of the things I utilize even with long lining and crankbaits as well is as I'm pulling them, I'm side scanning as well, and I'm marking structure. I know when I left Lake Hamilton, I don't know how it keeps getting in here, but I had 200-something brush piles marked just by trolling and watching my unit as I go. So I think people can really take advantage of pulling crankbaits, not only catching fish, but also learning that body of water fast.
When you go to a new lake, like we're subjecting here, do you do more of a Google Map type deal? Do you go off your what cars do you run?
We're on Lake Master.
Lake Master. So do you depend on that as far as you're looking, or you like Google Earth or anything? Looked at the water level when it was and all that.
Honestly, I'm not a big pre-planner. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more about feel once I get to the water and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to look at a lake map, and we're going to try to figure out certain contours and stuff, and you get some ideas by looking at a map. But then sometimes you get there and then you realize that, if you look at a map and you're like, oh, look at this main point right here. Well, after years of fishing, you realize that when everybody looks at that map, they look at that same main point because it looks right. That channel swings up there real high.
Yeah.
So it's about finding spots within spots and patterns within patterns. And, I mean, as far as tournament fishing goes.
What about fishing reports on the internet?
Never look at them.
Never look at them. Do your own fishing report.
I don't want, if I'm going to go fish a tournament out of town and I'm going to go to a lake that I've never been on before, honestly, I don't want to know nothing about it. I want to learn everything on my own because I don't want to have that in the back of my head. Well, Johnny said this is how he does it.
Have you done that before and it messes you up mentally?
Not really. We've just never taken outside information. We've always done it on the water. I like to say our way. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not. I know some people search for information and call anybody they can that might know a local to get some information, but it's always just worked better for us to show up and fish the day for what the day is.
What about as far as weights as you go to a tournament to a new lake? Do you do any research of what kind of weights have won in the past and you do a good average?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't look at averages. We look at what it took to win. And, in the years past. And if it's 1150 and 1224, we're looking for 13 pounds.
Now, since you talk about you do your own thing, you do your own, you pretty much show up and you do your own thing. What about as far as your fishing technique when you go to lake? Do you base, like, let's say Lake Fort? We know everybody jigs there, single pose. Do you determine what lake you go to what technique? Or you just, no matter what?
Well, it used to be if it's a single pole lake and it's not a single pole only tournament, we're probably going to rig because we want to separate ourselves from everybody else. We want to do something that's going to be different, that maybe gives us a little bit of an advantage.
More of the edge?
Right.
Probably has pressure too, huh?
If you look at some of the best fishermen in the country and then look back and see how many times they won on their home lake.
Not often.
Not very often.
Yeah, true.
You know how many turns we won the first time we've ever been on the lake?
How many?
Most of our wins. Because you're fishing that lake with no knowledge of it. You're fishing it for the day it is or for the week it is.
Right.
You're not fishing it for the fish you caught 5 years ago.
Right, you're not fishing history.
6 months
Right.
ago. You're fishing it for the conditions it is right now and where these fish want to live.
Charlie, you want to put an input on that?
Yeah, I can't catch somebody else's fish. If John Doe comes up to me and says, hey, Charlie, you need to go to this cove down here on the right, and we're just killing them. Well, I go down there. I can't catch those fish. When we go pre-fishing, and when I'm pre-fishing, I'm looking for, like Travis said, I'm looking for the fish that Brad hasn't found. If I go and look for the same fish he's found, then them fish are already beat up, So when I'm pre-fishing, and I think the key of me doing the pre-fishing is, which everybody says, boy, Dad, you got to come and do all the work, and Travis shows up, Well, they don't realize that when every break he's on, we're on the phone. When you're during lunch, we're on the phone. go try this, go try it. I called him last year, and I was just bumming. I could not catch a fish. He says, did you try this? He said, that's what you're telling everybody in the seminar. Why don't you try what you're oh, wow.
Taste of your own medicine, huh?
Yeah, and it just changed my whole mindset.
Yeah.
It's, I'm out in the water a lot, but I've always got a cell phone, and, it's a phone call away.
It's a teamwork deal.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, just because he's home working, his mind is working with me.
Yeah.
And he's always saying, we'll try this. Did you do this? Did you do that? It's like,
Yeah.
And my pre-fishing is his mind in the boat with me all the time.
Right.
I think that where people get misguided when it comes to fishing, and they don't, it's just paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Paying
Absolutely.
attention to detail.
Absolutely.
There's times when Dad and I's on the phone and he's out of town, and he's like, well, I tried crankbaits and I caught one doing this, but then I didn't catch another one. Ding, clue number one. Where was that fish caught? All right, can we go back to those type of areas and catch them fishing slower? So I'm like, Dad, you probably ought to go start fishing points, but you need to push jigs at 0.3 instead of pulling crankbaits at 2 mile an hour, right? He says, I was just entering into that creek on that first point right there, and I caught 4. I caught one good one, but then I got to that secondary point, and I lit them on fire. Ding, ding, ding. And it's about paying attention to these small details. Why these fish are here. How can we establish a pattern, especially on a lake you've never been on before? Because you're not going to go fish 10 years of history. You're fishing for what you can find.
I think going back and doing that recap, kind of like you guys are doing, saying, having that guy that's not in the boat necessarily, but saying, well, why did that happen? Let's think of why that happened at all. That's what it sounds like is going on to me with you guys.
It is. It's about paying attention, just putting a thought process behind it instead of just going
fishing.
Well, I caught him on a brush pile. Well, all right. Was it a brush pile on the main lake? Was it a brush pile on the back eddy of a current? Was it a brush pile in the back of the creek? Was it a secondary point? Did it have a gravel bottom? Did it have a mud bottom? Did it have a rock ridge in the middle of a mud bottom?
What species?
Was it?
You pay attention if it's black or white, depending on where you catch it.
Yeah. Absolutely. In certain lakes, you have to. Certain lakes, you ain't got a choice. You're going to catch a black one or a white one.
Right.
But is it off a channel swing? Is it off? All these little details start piling up, and they start piling up, and then all of a sudden, when you look at that lake map, you're thinking, man,
that's hot. That's hot right there. Let me go there.
If there's one stump right here, if there's a brush pile here when we get there, and then for us, we just put our poles down. Once we think that we have a pattern established, our poles hit the deck for tournament fishing. Now, if I was going out to catch them, they wouldn't be. And then we just start graphing, and we're just trying to find anything in that pattern within the pattern of where we've caught, 1 or 2 good fish. And then it's just putting it all together. And then tournament day, sometimes, man, you just get excited because you just know by what you've seen on that hummingbird side image, and when you get there, there's going to be a hammer laying there. And then sometimes you get really disappointed when there ain't. But
right, that's why it's golf fishing.
Yeah. The Postspawn, for anybody learning or beginning, as far as if you don't know what Postspawn is, that's after the spawn. As far as Postspawn, do you target any depth of water or give anybody advice? I mean, Postspawn, what's your average go-to depth in water?
Postspawn for us is going to be more about search and destroy, or at least that's what I call it. You know what I mean? These fish are going to spread back out. Whether that's a lot of times they'll go out in open water for a while, because they're just, like we talked about, they're feeding. Yep. They're on the move. This is kind of the transition into the start of like crankbait season, for instance, power trolling season. And typically what we try to do is we try to figure out where these fish are going and try to get ahead of the movement. If they laid eggs in the back of this creek, they're slowly working themselves way out, back into the main rivers and stuff like that. So we try to figure out where they're going and then fish in front of them instead of fish where they were.
That's a great point.
Because they're on the move. They're not going to stay put. They're chasing shad. And if you you know, you hear it all the time in Postspawn. Man, yesterday I caught the heck out of these fish, man. It's going to be awesome tomorrow. And then tomorrow they're like, oh, what happened? They're gone.
Yeah, open water fish kind of goes in that subject. Those, to me, are so hard to pin down without any kind of structure. You know, you're looking for open water fish, and crappie can swim extremely fast and move an area really fast as well.
Speaking of that, have you experienced like a group of fish you caught one day and you went back, just like you said, you went back the next, they wasn't there, you adjusted that day? How far travel did you go?
We've seen them on Grenada Lake probably move close to, I bet close to a mile in a day.
Dang.
It was one of them days that, you know, it's springtime, you get out there and it's the water temperature's 50 degrees. You know, you're fishing 6-7 foot flats and little drop off in ditches. I mean, we've all fished Grenada enough. You know what you look for.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the day, them fish are all the way up on the bank because the water temperature's 65 degrees. You know, I mean, where we fish at, if the water heats up 2 degrees in a day, that's something. You know, small, muddier lakes like that, you know, it heated up 15 degrees that day, just the surface temperature. But that was enough to move them fish from out there in them little ditches and cuts out in the middle of the lake, all the way to basically to the bank.
I think a lot of guys mess up is, like you said, Travis, is the whole about the details and paying attention to what we see even on our fish finders. I know fishing in history in our minds is so hard to get out, and you're like, man, 2 years ago in March, you know, I caught them here. They should be here. Why I'm not? I don't see them, but I know they're here, and just keep beating that dead horse and come home empty.
And there's today's technology. I mean, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, a simple 1 minute search gets rid of 20 minutes of wasted fishing time. You know, we don't have to find them with our hooks anymore. You know what I mean? We can use technology to do it, and if they're not there, they're not there. You know, I mean, simply put. You know.
Yeah. Well, how are you guys changing up nowadays? I know pre-live scope dominated the tournament fields. I don't know how many tournaments. I know 3 national championships. How are you guys adjusting now since live scope's been a part of the arsenal?
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
We're on the struggle bus.
Our pre-fishing is going to be more looking for the fish, and it's getting to a point that you don't even have to get your poles out any now to find them. You know, in the past, I would fish until I was getting it, you know, until they was there. Now, especially with the new Mega 360, it's the way I've been told, and a few people I've talked to, it's doing the same thing. We haven't got ours yet, but it's going to do the same thing as the live scope, except it's not live.
Right.
You know, so if you take that piece of it now, instead of looking at a 20-degree cone, I'm going to set it up and I'm looking at 180 degree. So I'm going to find my fish doing a lot of that, you know, and it's just like side imaging. You know, we've been looking for the brush piles and finding the fish in them with that away. You know, I'd say on the average, if I pre-fish 5 days, 2 days, I don't have a hook in the water. Now I probably will have the hook in the water 1 day. The rest of the time is okay. Those fish are in the brush. They're suspended over the brush, and I'm going to be targeting looking for the big fish. Because if you're going to win a tournament with the electronics, with the way the Humminbird is doing now, and with the live scope, you don't have to catch that fish. And if you're catching them,
you can't catch them later.
They're not going to bite during tournament day. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think that's one piece of information that the general public's going to have to, because I think a lot of people got a bad taste in their mouth. They're thinking, man, this live scope, you can catch them all. And they're going to gut all these lakes. Well, the truth behind it is used to be we'd catch, I mean, if fish were biting, man, we'd catch 250, 300 head a day just looking for fish.
Right.
Now we threw them all back in the lake. But now with live scope, we're not even sore mouthing those fish. You know, we're not even fishing for those fish at this point anymore. You know, when it comes to tournament time, you're not fishing for about 10 or 12 fish all day long with live scope.
So not worrying about anything else but the quality of fish that you're looking for.
Right. You're only searching for those big ones. And like what Dad's saying, you know, with the 360, we're running them, you know, tandem side by side. So we're looking at the whole everything around us, and then we're using the live scope within the Hummingbird unit to pinpoint, I guess, exactly where that fish is and how to catch, and how to catch that particular
Without
fish.
actually putting him in the boat.
Yes, you're culling your fish before you ever put a hook in the water.
Yeah.
You're out for the 7 biggest bites in the lake, and there's no need to waste time now chasing them. And it's unreal that you can actually go out there and say that fish is going to weigh a pound. That one over there is going to be a 2-pound crappie.
Right.
I'm not even going to put a hook in front of this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to there.
Yep.
It's now now that once you found that big fish, is see what profile or what they want. Whether they want a hair jig or they want a 2-inch bait, or do they want a black and glow, or do they want a monkey milk? It's getting to the point, it looks to me like that when I'm targeting that one fish, that do they want me to have my trolling rig sitting there beside it? I think, and the big thing about it now is this happened to us. Travis had seen, I think it was Lake Fork. He's sitting there and he sees one and he's down there and he's holding on it, and I'm sitting there watching him because by live scope watching it, I'm noticing that if I'm trying to chase that same fish, I'm spooking that fish.
Right.
So I'm sitting over here, and that fish goes 6 feet, 8 feet, and hits the jig up that way. So it's before live scope, you didn't realize that you was targeting the same fish. You're out here trolling and you think he's on this pole. He actually goes after a bait. You might think he's on your number 1 pole, and he runs all the way over to Travis's 4 pole before he bites.
Right.
It's the live scope has changed the game so much for us tournament fishermen that, it makes us know what we're looking at with our Hummingbird and the 360 and the side image, and now you see something and there's a nice brush pile and there's some fish in it. Now you go out there and you pinpoint and you say, well, those fish are all
pound fish.
3/4 pound
Yeah.
fish. We're not, let's go on to the next spot.
I ain't got to catch him to find that out.
Right.
But boy, I miss pulling up to that brush pile on tournament day, just thinking the next one's going to have them in it. The next one we're going to get a big one, because now you just pull up and
The
you're
guessing game.
no.
Yep.
You know?
Yep, that ain't there. Let's go.
And we don't catch, it used to be, like I said, we catch 200 fish a day that wasn't nothing for us, because because of the way that we fish, and I think and how hard we work at it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the fish are biting, obviously,
Right.
not when they're not, but and now we don't get to catch all them fish and then put them back in the lake. We don't.
I know myself. I think if you had asked me 4 or 5 years ago, pre-live scope, would a single pole win national championships and win tournaments like they are, I would have probably laughed.
On Grenada.
Or pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
I told people a year ago or 6 months ago, real good, one of the B&M, Kent Dresser, he calls me on the phone and we're talking about it and what live scope. He says, single pole will never win Grenada Lake. I said, I want to tell you something. If these 4 or 5 people that's fishing Crappie Master show up, they're all going to be in the top 10. He says, no way. What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, it just tells you that if you know
That technology.
if you know the technology, if you know how to use it, and you slow down and target those fish, you don't have to have 16 hooks in the water now.
Yeah.
Speaking of, when Travis, you was talking before when we went on air, you said all you need, talking about the technology, you got a grasp on it, you know what you're doing, you only need 4 hours. Go ahead and explain that. What you pinpoint to learn as far as a year ago and now what you need to focus on.
Right. We've been brush pile fishing for, since I've been running a boat. That's what we've always targeted. So I'm 100% used to looking at my rods and never looking at the trolling motor. I do everything by feel. I know if the wind blows here, which direction to turn that trolling motor to spin the boat around to keep our rods from getting hung up.
Right.
So I know exactly where that trolling motor is pointing all day long without ever looking at it. So now, for me, is the comment I made about I only need 4 hours to get it all figured out. 4 hours not in a tournament. 4 hours just to
Correct.
go out and have fun and go
Yes.
fishing around fish.
Right.
If you ain't catching them, it don't do you a whole lot of good either.
Right.
By already knowing where that trolling motor is pointing, all it's doing is adjusting my body. I know by my foot, I hear my legs over down here trying to run a trolling
I
motor.
see that.
I see that. I was sitting there watching you.
Try to turn this table.
I don't understand why we're not going to the right, but it's just about looking at that graph and never having to take the time to look at the trolling motor to try to figure out where that fish is. It's looking at that graph and just casting to that fish. Looking at that graph and straight drop vertical to it and never having to look up, never having to look at it. And it's about, the feel that you develop through 20 years or however long you've been fishing. When you let go of that bait, basically how far it's going to go. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you make that cast about how far it's going to go with the pressure that you put on the rod, the distance you want it to travel. So now you're just looking down at the graph and you're spinning that head around, and all of a sudden you do see that paper plate, and that old heart gets a little tick in it. And you're like, whoa, man, if we can get that one right there, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. We need this one. What's it going to take to try to get this fish to bite? Mm-hmm. And without hesitation, that jig's coming at that fish. And you don't need to look up. You don't need to look and see which way. The arrow's this way, so we got our thing. We bumped a little bit off that stump there a little bit, so it's a little bit over here. I think this is where I need to cast. And 3 casts later, you're still trying to get your jig in the screen with this big fish, and you're about to have a heart attack because you're seeing that he's starting to make a little movement. It's about just being able to get it there.
Yeah.
Now, are we going to be able to make every fish bite? Absolutely not. Are we going to make mistakes and we're going to spook fish off and that sometimes we can't even find them back? Absolutely. But it's those little things that's going to set you apart from the guy that's looking at that live scope because he knows if he's going to have a chance to win, he's going to be able to run it. And now he's looking at that live scope and he goes, oh, there's one. All right, I got a hook, I got a rod, there's a
That's
tree,
me.
that's to the left of that tree. It's about on the fish. And that's what you see the people that last year in the trail that we fished in Crappie Masters where they rose to the top is because they had spent enough time on the water using it. Yeah. They got to that point.
Yep.
And they're fishing twice as efficient as everybody else that's trying to do it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, last year we were still fortunate enough to take 5th in the points, but there was a learning curve. Lake Fork, Texas, first time we ever had it on the boat. 9:30, I'm still don't even want to look at this thing,
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have nothing in the boat, and we started looking at the boat, start looking at this live scope, see what it's about, pull up to a stump, like, oh, wow. Flip a jig down. We're fishing 18 foot deep and 22 foot of water, and the water temperature is 64 degrees. If you'd asked me this question a year ago, I'd have told you you're a fool. Why ain't you up there in 5-6 foot of water?
Yeah.
Beating the bark off every stump you can find,
Right.
And that, it was about a 2.25 pound fish ate it, and I went, whoa, Dan, that was cool.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow, wow.
Yeah.
And, literally a couple hours later, we had 1570 in the boat and 7 fish the first day ever using this piece of technology.
I bet y'all was giggling, wasn't y'all? Was y'all giggling?
Giggling.
Was you?
I stomped the carpet off that boat.
That's a good description that as you put it, the transition of learning the curve and not taking, getting rid of that time that you learn it until you
It's about mastering it. It's about the little saving time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you look at that, the Postspawn. Would you ever dreamt that the Postspawn on basically a head-street lake that you're going to 65-degree water temperature that you're going to find those fish 18 foot down and and then big old fish. It was so neat because, like I say, we just got it on there. I'd used it all week. He shows up tournament day, here it is, and you see that big old fish doing this, and when he turned up,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was hammer time.
Yeah.
It was the first time that we'd ever seen anything like that. So, with the two different graphs, what the live scope's doing, what the hummingbird has done for us, since '05. You know.
I know that me personally, it kind of, especially this past summertime, fishing standing timber, which I hadn't done that in 15 years. And I mean, usually I just pull crankbaits on, river ledges and, caught plenty of fish. But I said, man, this live scope, I'm going to go out there and actually, fish standing timber. And I hadn't done it forever. But it kind of lit a new fire under me, to get out there and learn something new. But also, it's a different mindset when it's come to live scope with me. It goes into a crappie hunt. I'm hunting those big fish. I'm not hunting fish necessarily anymore. I'm hunting that one fish or those 7 big fish.
It amazes me how you can chase a crappie down. Mm-hmm. Matt Rogers hollers at me. He said, "Hey, Charlie," he said, "why don't we go fishing?" I said, "Okay." We was at Truman Lake. It's flooded, so we're up there fishing these bushes, and he's watching, telling me, "You catch a deer, and he said, "Oh, there goes one." Mm-hmm. He said, "That's a good one." We literally chased that fish. He literally chased that fish probably 5 football lengths.
Good Lord.
That he stayed on that fish, and he caught it, and it was a 185 on Truman Lake, and that's a good fish. But if you told me that you're going to chase a single fish for a half a mile,
right,
out of your dang mind, huh?
I said you're crazy.
We've never done it before, that's for sure. The only thing I'm trying to figure out about this whole live scope and this whole Garmin movement is, why didn't they send us one 3 years before anybody else could
I
get
heard
one?
that, and I.
You imagine the damage we could have done if we was the only one that had one.
Oh, absolutely.
And basically, that's what the guys are good. They got it. You know, all the Oklahoma boys. It would seem like they make them down there, and they was always a step ahead of everybody because they've had it for.
Right.
They had it before everybody else. The ones that learned on the Panoptics, and then the day the new one come out, they had it. We talked to you a year ago. We said, "No," I said, "we see everything we need to go." Well, after 3 tournaments and you go to the lake and you had the best weight you ever had, and you're in 15th place.
Yeah.
You're targeting. You go out and you target the fish that you think is going to do you good. You take Mark Twain Lake this year. There was 9 boats that the top 9 would all set a lake record.
Jesus.
But
that don't even sound possible, but it's showing different.
At the same time, you look a year, 2 years from now, and I think it's going to get to the point that we're going to have bumper boats. Mm-hmm. Because you got all these people just staring down and running around chasing fish.
Yeah, we was talking about that last night.
And tournament guys, man, they've done it long enough. They know where the big fish live and all these lakes that we continue going to year after year. So everybody's gonna be fishing the same area, and nobody's ever gonna look up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've already heard of stories of boats running into one another because they don't look up.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be, I'm fishing, and Dad, you make sure I don't hit nothing, and tell me or get the net.
Yeah.
And that's so it's changing everything. Before when you're spider rigging and stuff, you got this guy's running 4 poles, this guy's running 4 poles, and he had his job taking care of the fish in the back. I had my job running the trolling motor and watching the graphs. And it worked as a team.
Yeah.
And now it's pulling it back towards like more of a one-man sport.
Yeah.
Because you get 2 guys fishing at the same time at times, and you're both looking at this screen, and all of a sudden your pole slapping it. And we did that last year. Look, it's like we went back to trout fishing on a covered stream.
And the spooking the fish, and you never realize what it spooked. I mean, I don't know how many times that I would take a fish and I'd put it down and I'd drop something, and Travis said, "You just spooked that fish." No, I didn't spook nothing. Now, if you, me walking
Splashing.
quietly,
Just putting another hook in the water.
yeah, it's those. Some of those fish are so spooky that on a given day, you can't throw a fish back to the live well, because if you throw it back there, you've done spooked that big fish out there.
Yeah.
You know how many theories I'm so glad now it's getting proven that we used to argue over? I said, damn, man, why you got to walk so heavy-footed? You done spooked half the fish out of this brush pile. No, I didn't. Them fish can't hear nothing.
And now you watch this. Now you watch.
Does he
the fish
tiptoe
go.
now?
Yeah, why you got to slam the lid? All right, we can talk all day long. They can't get the vibration from out of our mouth through the boat and down to the water, but you do make a sound on this boat itself, and it's going to transfer, sound into the water. Just slam the lid down. Boy, you just look in that live scope down, they go poof, like a covey of quail. So
Yeah.
Let's turn left for a minute here. All the guys we talk to, I know y'all talk about it through all the anglers and everything. As far as just a question for both of y'all. As far as like conservation goes, as far as like what everybody's talking about live scope, is it going to hurt? Is it not going to hurt? Is it going to change the game of the tournaments?
Well, I think we said the game with the tournaments.
Well, I mean, like as far as conservation though, because I keep talking to guys, and they're just saying, one guy says it's not going to hurt it. One guy says, oh yeah, it's going to murder the lake. What's your personal opinion on it?
First impression, I thought it was going to kill lakes. I thought that, this is giving a tool to people that's going to let them fish at another level. And, basically the lakes were going to get gutted. But now when you actually think about it and you slow down and you realize what's going on, it's kind of what I touched on earlier, is instead of people going out and trying to catch 150 fish in a day, you're only targeting 10, 12, maybe 13 fish a day. So I think now looking at it and seeing what's going on, I think that it's you're going to catch. We're actually taking less numbers of fish out of a body of water because everybody's chasing that 16-pound bag that's never been caught on that lake instead of catching, a whole bunch of 10 to 12-inch fish. You're just catching a few big fish.
Yeah, you're culling, instead of culling 100 fish a day, you're culling 10 fish.
Right. I think looking at it now, I think there's actually going to be less fish taken out because of live scope. Now, are they going to be a better run of fish? Absolutely.
My opinion is what's going to happen is it's not the tournament fishing that's going to hurt it or make it. It's going to be the body of water. You're not going to go to Eufaula, Oklahoma, that's got hundreds of shoreline and hurt that lake. There's a reason they got a 37
Limit,
a day position, So if you look at, I think the little lakes, if you take some of these little lakes that they're catching these huge fish in, you're talking a 50-acre lake. Okay? So now the guys that was going out there catching them, now all of the meat hunters, which I call them, they go out and catch a limit. Every day they go out, and when they catch a limit, when they was targeting the eating fish, which I'm saying Lake of the Ozarks, Truman, your 10 to 12-inch crappie,
right?
They're going to go out and target the big fish. If you talk to biologists, they say some of them big fish need to be kept. They need to be got out of the lake. So I've always figured it's kind of like my cattle. If I'm raising livestock, I want that best bull and I want that best cow out there for my breeding stock. Well, I want everybody to leave those big fish for the breeding stock.
Right.
So I want them to stay in there. I want to eat that slot limit. I think the conservation is going to have to do a better job,
of watching things.
Well, that or, you go to Illinois and they got slot limits, like they do in bass, and different things. I think a lot of these, my personal opinion is a lot of these lakes is going to have to go to the same thing. You're only going to allow to have, if the limit for the meat hunters, they're only going to be able to keep 7 or 10 fish over 12 inches, for an example, on Truman Lake. And the rest of their limit's going to have to be between 9 and 12.
And take your pictures on the water, not in your garage.
Yeah.
You can get the same picture for Facebook or whatever social media you want, standing on the front of your boat. I mean, it makes a prettier picture anyways than have them laid out on a tailgate or on a table.
Yeah. Do y'all
Catch
think
some big fish and throw them back. I mean, personally, we think 10-inch fish eats better than a 12-inch fish.
Do y'all think conservation already knows about it, and do you think they're going to engage in doing something different earlier than what they're probably used to do, as far as checking lakes?
I think most of the places in conservation, yes, they're aware of it. They're like, they're the professionals that know how to take care of it. So yeah, I think they're aware of it. I think it's going to have to be a learning process. You know, if you told me that, you know, a lot of these little lakes that you could never, you know, there was one or two, Mark Twain, 1 or 2 pound and a half fish brought in, you know, now there's 40 of them come in at a, you know, you take Grenada Lake, you know, how many 3-pounders, you know, is actually brought in. Now there's, instead of being 10 3-pounders brought in for this tournament with 75 boats, there's going to be 75 3-pounders brought in. You
But
know,
at the same time, those fish are going back in the lake, and it ain't going to hurt the overall numbers of crappie. And I think if conservation's going to step in on anything to do with fishing, it's crappie definitely ain't going to be first, just because of the mass numbers that crappie reproduce.
Right.
You look at what's happening to spoonbill.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last night. I was fixing to say
I
it.
mean, when you can pull up to a spoonbill, drop your hook straight down, set the hook, and bring him in, you know, you don't even have, you know, crappie, at least you still got to talk him into biting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that spoonbill ain't got a chance. He just, you know, he's getting a big hook in his side. And I think that if anything's ever going to happen as far as technology movement and how easy it's making for us, you know, just as human beings going out fishing to catch fish, I think it's going to start probably on a fish like that. It's not going to be on crappie. Because I don't think, you know, as long as people take, if your lake limit's 15 and you only take 15 a day off that lake, there's a reason why conservation has it set that way. You know,
Well, some lakes, I think it's going to help some of them actually to become better lakes because fish are being taken out better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's needed in crappie fishing. Crappie have to get harvested, you know, to continue to grow.
yes.
right? Because they'll eat their food source up
Yeah.
and basically starve themselves out like they do in a lot of ponds. You know, people want to introduce them to the pond, and then 2 years later, they're catching these things that look like little stick figures.
You can see through them.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah.
no food left because they've already eaten it all themselves. You know.
So it could actually help some bodies of water.
Yes.
I think it will. I think it will. There's bodies of water that we fish in like you know, even big lakes that you can tell just by the shape and the size of the majority of the fish that the food source is not there.
Right.
You know, you catch 150 fish in a day's time and only 3 of them are over 9 inches, and they're all thin as a rail.
They need to be taken out.
Yep.
There's some, you know, there's an overabundance of fish.
Yeah. So I think it's a double-edged sword like anything else, but
It is.
you know, I hope that people realize, well, I can get better at catching fish. I don't need to go in the springtime and fill a freezer because, in reality, if once they get good at this live scope or any of these techniques, really, but they should have the confidence to go out. Well, I'm gonna eat fish this week. I'm gonna go catch them this week instead of trying to put them all up in one time.
Right.
And I hope people start doing that.
And you know, like I said, or tried to say, if you just go out and it doesn't matter the method, you know, I used to be, I heard people complaining about spider rigging. Well, man, you're spider rigging, you're gutting our lake. Man, if I catch the same bring home the same 15 fish that you're going to bring home,
Right.
does it matter if I do it in 5 minutes
Don't matter what technique.
or 8 hours?
Yeah.
Does it matter if I use it with 8 poles or 1 pole? Or if I'm using jigs, if I'm using minutes, doesn't matter. I'm still taking 15 fish
Right.
out at the end of that day.
Yep.
So, does LiveScope give us a more technological advancement on how to catch them fish? Absolutely. Is it teaching us stuff? Is it, you know, putting some of the theories that we had in our head? Man, I knew it. I knew it. There's other things like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I never guessed that one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and yeah, but at the end of the day, you're still only taking whatever your state
It's out of the same pot.
like limit out.
Yeah.
And for us, we're going to throw the big ones back anyways. We just enjoy catching them, you know. And we're going to take a picture and we're going to lay right back in the lake. You know, we're not going to take it home. We're not going to.
Skillet fry it.
Right. We're not, because I'm telling you, man, I'd rather eat a 9 or 10 inch fish than I would a 13, 17 inch crop.
Yeah.
I want to give 1 minute to a spotlight with B&M poles, and I want you guys to tell us your favorite B&M pole that you've been using that you can tell everybody about.
Which technique we can go on about this for hours now.
Jigging.
For brush pile fishing, trolling, we use ultralights. If we single pole fishing, normally we use either a 10, typically a 10 to 12 foot brush cutter. If we're casting, we're using the shooting dock, the dock shooter. I mean, if we're fishing open water, we're typically using best graphite jig pole, 14 foot, sometimes 16 foot. If we're power trolling, we used to use pro staff rods, which we still do on up to a certain weight. Now they got a new rod out.
Yeah, the new PT rod now, for power trolling or pushing crankbaits, you can put a 3-4 ounce weight on that thing and not like it's not there. So which rods do we use? When I get ready to go start pre-fishing, I'll have 45 rods in the boat. Because of all of the different, So then when Travis gets there, I give him hell because this guy, he just don't get his priorities straight anymore. He thinks he ought to be working and taking care of kids instead of going to help me pre-fish. I don't know what's wrong with him.
That don't even sound right.
But anyway, I'll have 45 poles. I mean, from shooting the 6-foot dock shooter, I'm going to use that pole. I'll be using brush cutter, if I'm the 12-foot brush cutter, because I like the distance out there. When I'm single poling, I'll have my 12-foot ultralights that if I'm going to be brush pile fishing, I'll find them in the brush piles. We're going to be using a 12-foot ultralight. If they're open water, we're going to be using a 16-foot BGJP if we're slow trolling. And to me, everybody said, what's slow trolling? I said, from dead still, we got our power poles down, and we're sitting dead still with that. Lake Washington, that was, the wind's blowing. Man, I tried to stay in 8 foot of water for I could actually stop or I could drag it to bottom because.
Not to interrupt you, but you see what's going on there. We talk about fishing patterns within patterns and specifics about how we fish and why we catch fish in a specific spot. Now we're talking about why we use specific rods for these specific little little things, And if you look at rod companies, and there's a lot of companies that build really nice rods.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But you look at Jack and B&M poles, and he has developed a rod for each one of these little
techniques,
patterns within patterns, these little techniques and branches off techniques. When we go to Jack and it doesn't being a pro staffer. It could be a guy at Bass Pro that just starts talking to him. I'm like, man, this is how we fish, but there just ain't a pole in the market that's capable of holding a 3 ounce weight and pulling 2 mile an hour.
No,
and Jack starts researching and thinking about it, and all said, well, next year we got a pole that can handle a 3 ounce weight, at 2 mile an hour. And you look at his whole lineup, each one of them poles has a different purpose for a different given time.
Absolutely.
If a lot of people don't know right now B&M just come up with a new pole. What's it called?
The stick.
The stick,
The
yes.
stick. Have y'all got y'all's hands on it yet?
I'm sorry.
Have you had your hands on it yet?
Yes, we got it at the show and been demming on them. And it's a 13-foot rod, basically for live scoping, for they can get out there a little further. And, so now you're pendling back at 13 feet out instead of at 10 feet out. So you're getting out a little further. You're not spooking them. It's the same thing when I'm talking about a 12-foot pole trolling or a 20-foot. If you see that they're out there, well, people that's seeing now, they're using they want a longer pole. They're thinking a 13-foot pole is a perfect length for single poling live scoping. So yes, that's like he said. Jack says, I'm going to get one on the market.
Yep.
And they're selling real good. I got one where I was giving seminars back there that we got a 3-pound weight on it, and I'm horsing a 3-pound weight up on a table with it. So,
yeah, I heard about that. I need to see that. I missed that. I guess we're kind of closing up here. Is there anything else y'all want to add before we cut off here? Both look at each other here. Yeah. I guess that's a no.
We appreciate you guys coming back, and I'm definitely going to invite you back on again. And we always have a blast doing it with these.
Yeah, I think we're on for an hour now. But it's always good. I enjoy talking to you guys on air and off air. So it's always a pleasure.
Yep.
Hey, man, thanks for having us. We have a strong passion for crappie fishing, the crappie fishing industry, and it's something that gets us out of bed in the morning.
Yep.
Gets our hearts pumping, and
that's right.
And just something I've always enjoyed doing, and we enjoyed teaching people how to catch fish, and And, you know, I tell my kids, I said, man, if you learn from my mistakes, you're going to be a lot better off than I've ever been.
Right.
Sometimes they got to learn them on themselves. But
Yeah, exactly right. I'm doing that right now. Well, another special thanks to, you see the grizzly bear in the back. Special thanks to Grizzly Jig letting us set up here at the new place they're going to be opening up. Other than that, guys, special thanks to our new sponsors for 2020. I think we got 10 coming on here. Other than that, Brad, you want to add anything else before we leave?
You know, like I said a couple episodes ago, we need the support by our listeners by actually hitting subscribe button no matter what platform you're listening to. So if you're watching our show right now, make sure to hit subscribe. It's very important for us.
Yeah, help us spread the word.
y'all might have to teach me how to do that.
Yeah,
I'll show
so
you,
we'll off
show you
air.
real quick. All right, guys, other than that, man, I'm Justin Berry,
Brad Chapel.
and we got Charlie and Travis Bunting. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all.
Holla.
Big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away.